Welcome to C5 Leadership Training. Our goal is to equip you to care, counsel, build community, commission saints, and to gather them together as the church. We hope that you will meet people at the point of need, humbly and like Christ, meeting them in their physical suffering, their spiritual temptations, and overcoming sin and suffering by the way that you care well for them, counsel them through that, to lead them from where they are to where God has for them. So I want to talk to you for just a second about what C5 leadership is. C5 is really encompassing all of what we do here at WBC to minister well to the people that we love. It's taking the discipleship pathway and the leadership pipeline and pulling them together to ask the question, what does this look like for those people who are far from Jesus? What would it look like for us to take our core identity here at WBC and to multiply it through you into our community and into the nations? So hopefully we can equip you as disciples and leaders to do what God has called you to do. So care is the frontline ministry of Jesus. It's where He meets them when they are far from Him, when they're suffering in this world and struggling with sin in this world. Jesus humbling Himself to become a human. He meets them where they are in the midst of this depraved world. And so our challenge too is to learn, like Christ, how to meet people where they are at the point of care. So care ministries. Care ministries are meeting people in their sin and suffering to lead them from where they are to where God has for them. But we know that we don't leave them there. We aren't just people who care. We are also people who counsel in the midst of care. And so we know that Christ wasn't just the hands or the freedom or the healing, but He was also the counsel, the leading them through the gospel, through His message, His good news, that He lived, died, and raised from the dead, leading them through His word to what God had for them. And so we know that we're not just the hands and feet of Jesus, but we're also the mouth. We also preach the gospel to lead people out of that sin and suffering into what God has for them. So care, meeting them at the point of need. It's the frontline ministry against Satan. Satan attempting to slaughter our people, the people who are with us and the people who are children of God. Satan is attempting to destroy what God has created. And he does that through sin and suffering. And so care, meeting them at that point of need as a frontline ministry. Counsel, pulling them out through God's word, not through anything else, but through God's word. It's biblical. And then finally, we know that all care and counsel is going to lead to community. It has to. Yeah, we cannot create people who are individualistic. They're going to fall back into that sin and suffering. God created us as communal beings. It wasn't good for man to be alone. Jesus did discipleship in community. And so care ministries ought to always lead into counsel. It should never just be hands and feet. It should never just be mercy ministries. It's always got to have the gospel with it. And that counsel should always lead into biblical community. So we are pushing people, encouraging people into that biblical community here at WBC, but then also commissioning people, sending people out as saints, taking the gospel to meet people at their point of care. Also, in the midst of sin and suffering, they're now going out to do what has been done for them. So they're commissioned to go and do what God has called them to do. From where they were to what God has for them. You do that with multiple people, making disciples throughout our community, and it forms a church. That's what WBC is. It's a formation of people who've been cared well for, who've been counseled to follow after God's word, who've been drawn into community with a group of people and called it church. And so when we do this well, and it's commissioning people out to go do it again, it forms churches. As Westminster Baptist Church has been formed, we too are called to continue to draw people into that kind of community through care, counsel, drawing into community, and then commissioned to go do the same. And that might look like you going nationally or internationally to go and form churches for the glory of God and the good of man. And so I hope that this leadership training will equip you well to do that as we look at how we merge together leading for Christ, but also becoming disciples of Christ. How we do this inside of a local church, but also go outside of the local church. Our prayer is that you will be equipped to do what God has called you to do. Care, counsel, community, commission, church.